Well, summer is here and welcome to Otto's Garage. The brake master cylinder reservoirs, which are going to be mounted up higher than obviously where the master cylinders are, they need a bracket really. They're going to go up here. And what I've decided to do, and I was umming and ahhing about this for a while, is we do need a strut brace. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to use the brace which was originally intended for the dash, but fouled the original dash, so I couldn't use it in there. This is off the roll cage. I've chopped that to the right size, so I'm going to weld that in between the reinforcing plates on the corners here that we had before. So, excuse me. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that in place, and then that will give us a mounting point for a number of things, I'm sure, but primarily for the reservoirs that are going to go on the back there. So what I'll do is I'll get the reservoir in position, and then we'll have to mark up a bracket which we can weld to the back side of the strut brace, and then we can take the whole thing out, clean it all up, ready to go, and then get it welded onto the reinforcing plates on the cage there. Oh, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so we can see there, I've just put a few stitch welds across there, and we've got some extended tacks on the back, and that just stiffens that up nicely. So the next thing to do really is to get that on the car, have a look and see what it looks like, and basically, is it in the right place? The other thing I'm going to do is just give this a coat of paint, because obviously once it's on the car I'm not going to be able to get underneath it into these nooks and crannies. So we'll give her a coat of paint, but we're not going to be too bothered about the ends because obviously they are going to be welded. So we'll just get the most of it done. And I think I'm going to go with a bit of silver on that. Happy days. I've just been over to Tim's and our piston back. So this was the one that was the wrong size before, and it's obviously a completely different piston, but it's the right size. It's been through the parts washer, bit of black on the top of the belt. That's nothing. There's no carbon build-up anywhere now. It's all nice and clean. The holes are all clear. I've weighed it, and yeah, I think it was 584, but we'll double check. Yeah, there you go, 584. So we need to take off 9 grams. And then that'll be the same weight. The thing I was concerned with was that it was going to be lighter than the other ones that are in the engine. That would have been a disaster. But anyway, she's not, she's heavier. So that's a good thing. That means you can spin her on the lathe, take off 9 grams, and then basically get it fitted in that engine. And that'll be happy days. It means we can get the bottom end all closed off, fit the sump properly, and all the other little bits and bobs that are associated with the bottom end and the oil pump, etc. So that's good news. So we'll do that in a day or two's time, and then we can get it all put back together. Top tip for you here. So if you're looking for a clean work area, which is essential when you're doing pistons, what I'm using here is actually flooring, so like laminate flooring underlay basically, This is like a foam, but of course it is totally clean before it goes down. And when you have a messy work area, you can just chuck the old one in the bin and jobs are good 'un. I think that was from Howden's and they're quite cheap. But in any event, if you've got some left over for some laminate floor, keep them. And of course they're nice and soft as well, so you're not going to damage any of your parts. So that's what we're going to do now, is put the last piston back in the engine. So I've just been over to Tim's and we've put it through the lathe, and now it weighs the 575 gram, which all the others weighed. So we've got a perfectly balanced set of pistons. So now I'm going to put it back on to the conrod with the wrong piston on it, to swap them over, and then basically it can get in the block and we can sort out that bottom end finally. Okay, good stuff. Well, I'm pleased that's back in now. So anyway, we've got 4 pistons and 4 big ends, and they're all in the right place. I've just been having a look at whether I can fit anything else on the bottom end there and get that sump on. And you can see, it's just a little tip for you basically. This gasket between the oil pump and the main block here, when you fit it, it will just protrude. So you can see that there, it's sticking up quite a bit. Now, of course, if I leave that as it is, when we come to put the gasket on for the main sump, what will happen is we'll probably end up getting some sort of leak going on here, and then you'll end up with a drip. So all I've done is just got a Stanley blade, a new Stanley blade. I've just taken that off, so that's exactly flush right the way across there. That means when the new gasket goes on, she'll seamlessly go around there and we won't get any drips. So it's worth checking that. We'll probably get the same thing at the back end here. I haven't been able to fit the rear plate yet because obviously it's still on the stand, but now we've got all of the pistons in, we can probably just momentarily take it off the stand, get that rear cover plate put on, and then we can put the sump on and get the gasket all done. This is the oil pickup pipe. So basically this part goes down into the bottom of the sump and sucks the oil up the tube, and it goes into the oil pump there basically. So what we've got to do, it's also supported on this main shell down here as well. So there's a bolt going in there, there's a pair of bolts going there. That's obviously got to have a gasket on that. I've just given that a nice clean up and visited the wire wheel with it, and just to make it nice and clean and shiny. And The big thing you've got to do with all of these parts, really, anytime that you're doing any kind of cleaning work on it, is get the airline on it, blow it all out. So I've blown it through the mesh, I've blown it down this hole as well. So we're just making sure that we haven't got any foreign bodies in there. And I could have just stuck it in as it was, but I wanted it to look nice. Nobody else will know, but I will. Of course, the other thing you've got to remember when you're cleaning up all these little parts that nobody's ever going to see is where's all that contamination going to end up? Because eventually those little specks of cack, you know, it might just be a wee bit of surface rust that you've had in the, you know, while the part's being stored on the shelf, that is going to come off, and that is going to end up in the inside of your engine. So it does pay to get everything nice and clean while you can, even though nobody can see it. That's that vent tube fitted, so this basically dips down into the sump area and it sucks the fumes out. So when you get back pressure, that gets sucked out and goes back into the intake system basically. So that's your breather, your oil breather. Down the bottom there you can see how it kind of swans past. It's not very good for light. Let me just see if we can get a little bit of light in there. There. Okay, so you can see how that kind of swans past the crank, so that it's not going to collide with it. And then on the other side, and I've just taken that off at the moment, you've got your breather assembly. So this little cup, that tube locates down into the dip tube, and then basically this is the breather assembly, and it takes all the gases away. So I'll stick that back on in a minute once we flick it back over. Okay, so we've got to have a little gasket on there, and this is the one that's come with the oil pump, so we know that's right, but basically you can tell by the shape. It's got that special flat on the one side of it, so that is going to fit on there. What I'm just going to do is put a bit of the RTV on it, pop that on each side. So we'll put a bit on the pickup, the end of the pickup, and then we'll set the gasket on it, and then we'll put a little bit on the pump, and then we can put the screws in. And the other thing that I've done is I've just used a bit of the stud lock in these bolts that are in here, because there's no way I want one of those coming off and dropping in the bloody sump. But so we'll do the same on that, on the pickup for the oil pump. So that's super critical really, that you're having a good seal there and it's sucking the oil and it's not just sucking air in between the gasket at that point. That's the pickup in, so got that gasket on there, put a little bit of Loctite on these bolts because I don't want those falling down into the motor. So that's all good there. What I've got to do now is just flick her over, and then we can have a look at the other end of that breather tube. So if we just whip her up that way around, and you can see down here basically this is where the breather tube comes up. So the little cap has got to locate down into the breather tube like that, and then it'll pull the fumes up from down in the engine, which is what we want. I'm going to have to just put a little bit more gasket on that, so I'll clean that up, get that gasketed on there, and then get that replaced. Here it is. So this is with the intermediate sump on, as opposed to the oil pan. But you can see there where you've got these kind of baffle windage plates in there. They correspond to what's going on in here as well. So we've got quite a bit of baffling going on. It's very baffling, in fact. And there you can see the breather tube and indeed the oil pickup, which disappears off down the back there to the pump. So it's all quite compact in there. The next thing I need to do really is take the motor off the stand. So I'm going to just temporarily put the oil pan back on there, and then we'll have to get the engine crane out, lift her off the stand, and then there's a few little bits on the back end, so the flywheel end of the engine, that we need to put back together. So you can see down here basically we've got the crankshaft seal at the back there, that unit that's got to go on. There's a blank at the end of where we took those balancer shafts out, that's got to go in there, and I think there's also a oil way down on the other side. Down here there's a plug that's got to go in the end of the oil gallery on that side. So I can't get any of that while it's on the stand, so we'll have to whip that off, and then we can have a bit of a play on that side. I've just welded that brace bar in that we looked at earlier, and there she is. So I know some people have brackets off here and they have removable bars and all that, but of course, because we've got rid of the heater box, which was down there, and obviously that stepped bulkhead, because on the original integrale she steps right the way out, it meant we've got more space, so being able to weld that in properly, so the front end is going to be nice and solid now. And I'm glad I've got that, because I was always kind of a bit dubious with not having a dash bar running across here, but now we've got that in there, we've got a really firm front end on it, I'm sure. And then of course it has meant that we've been able to mount our master cylinder reservoirs for the brakes. What I will have to do is, where they're just coming past the metal edge there, I'm going to put some rubber protection on that so we don't get any rubbing. But they are air equipped hoses, which are PVC lined as well. So that's quite nice. That's taking shape there. So front brake lines have got to go down obviously to the calipers, which you can just see down there. We'll have to get those sorted out. And then obviously we've got to sort out the lines running back to the rear of the car. The other thing that I haven't forgot about, I still have to sort out a line for the power steering, which is going to come all the way around to the pump over here. So lines. It's all about lines at the moment. But that's quite nice. What obviously I'll have to do is I'll have to mask up and paint some of these ends. Yeah, that's good. Well, bit of a catch up for you there. So glad we managed to get that piston back in the engine there. Everything's good. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Otto's Garage. Stay tuned. Catch you next time. Goodbye. Bye bye.